Greetings, viewers. This is Little Beep, back with some more Standard. Haven't been playing much 1v1 Commander lately because it's really hard to find opponents in the leagues, and the friendly structure makes the prizes pretty low. But the deck I have been jamming, Anguished Affinity, has been performing really well. In total, I played 19 matches today, and I went 13 and 6 through those, so 3 4-1s and then one abortive 1-3 in a league. The Anguished Affinity deck I've been playing feels really powerful. Let me just show you the current version before I get into some game replays. So this is a little different than what you'll see on the videos. The only change made from the videos was that I moved Tezzeret to the sideboard, added an Antiquities War to the main deck, and added a Metal Spinner's Puzzle-Knot to the main deck to replace a servo schematic. This is experimental, and in fact, after the league I just played, I think I might put one Tezzeret back in the main deck. Tezzeret is frequently a house, a really flexible card. But about the Metal Spinner's Puzzle-Knot, so previously this deck only ran Prophetic Prisms. Prophetic Prism doesn't just draw cards, it also fixes your mana, which is very convenient. But I found that I was sometimes getting a little bit too servo-flooded, drawing too many Puzzle-Knots and servo schematics, and too few Prophetic Prisms. It almost feels like I want more of an even split. Instead of having 4 Prophetic Prisms and 8 Servo Makers, maybe something like 6 and 6. So I'm trying 5 and 7. It might be that Metal Spinner's Puzzle-Knot, because it doesn't filter mana like Prism does, just doesn't quite do enough, even though it can draw another card later. But I'm hoping I can use it to hit finishers more consistently. And I think, as I'm thinking about it, I'm going to go ahead and replace this Tezzeret in the main for an Antiquities War. It's always tricky to figure out how to balance these. Tezzeret is better against the big mid-range decks that this deck can struggle with sometimes. The Antiquities War, maybe it's fair to say they're actually both pretty good against mid-range. They just thrive in different settings. The Antiquities War is great when your opponent's off to a slow start, but has a lot of more powerful spells coming up later, and sometimes you can just force them to never attack because you're just going to kill them if they do. Antiquities War is also nice in some matchups where it can search for cards like Sorcerer's Spyglass and Sentinel Totem that can really swing a game if an opponent's relying on the graveyard or one specific activated ability. On the other hand, Tezzeret's better early if you just need to kill some creatures. Tezzeret also allows the really sick play of casting a Planeswalker, then plussing Tezzeret, and then using the Ethereum cell he creates to cast a Battle at the Bridge or a Metallic Rebuke. That can be really powerful. One last change I made is dropping to 3 Battle at the Bridge in the main deck. I used to play 4, mostly because I was seeing a ton of red aggro, but I feel like those decks have dropped off lately and been replaced by more of the white-black Knights decks and Constrictor decks. Battle at the Bridge is still powerful there, but the life gain's a little less relevant, and so I've tried to drop a battle and add a Karn just to have a little bit more beef and have a bit of an easier time finding a finisher. Again, some of these changes may be reverted later, but it's always a work in progress. In any case, let's look at some games. I'll just replay the league I just played. I'll start with a loss, so the one match where things were not quite as promising here. And let me just turn off game sounds for a second. So, our first match, we are up against a red-black aggro deck, so haven't really seen much mono-red at all lately. It's been almost entirely red-black and white-black Scrap Heap Scrounger decks. Scrap Heap Scrounger and Heart of Kiran are 2 cards this deck can really struggle with. It's part of the reason we run 2 Sentinel Totems between the main deck and the sideboard. So I keep a hand, by the way, that's a very good hand. Other than a Renegade map on turn 1, it has everything you want. You get a Card Worker's Puzzle-Knot on turn 2. You can switch things up, play Battle the Bridge or Metallic Rebuke, depending on what our opponent's doing, how fast they're coming out. And then we have Tezzeret into Battle at the Bridge for turn 4, if we have kept that in our hand. So we'll be thinking about that as we move forward. For now, we're just going to play a Puzzle-Knot. So we can afford to take some hits from Scrap Heap Scrounger. That's one of the reasons Battle at the Bridge is great. If it was a Fatal Push, sure, we could have killed the Scrounger, and that might have been more flexible here, but the fact that we can use it to gain like 5 or 6 life later is sometimes really valuable, plus the fact that it kills Lyra, Dawnbringer, and cards of that nature. It's just much more flexible than it looks, even though it seems like it could be kind of expensive. So our opponent Ballistas are servo, which is curious. It may be that they've played against this deck before and just want to keep us from casting a Herald of Anguish for as long as possible. Who knows? But maybe they just want to get through with the Scrounger, but we're just going to go ahead and make another servo. We're not going to be short of artifacts this game. And yeah, again, our opponent just goes ahead and trades with the servo. So we are happy trading these for cards, because these Cogwar's Puzzle-Knots aren't just useless artifacts, they're also making mana for us, they're letting us use Tezzeret later. And this turn we're going to make that play we talked about before, where we just Tezzeret, plus it, And this time we're not going to battle the bridge with Scrap Heap Scrounger. I'm happy with Tezzeret taking a hit, and I don't want my opponent to resolve a Chandra or something this turn, because Tezzeret versus Chandra is not a fight that goes very well for Tezzeret. Tezzeret doesn't really have any way to attack Planeswalkers, but we're happy just chilling out, hanging back, taking a hit off the Scrap Heap Scrounger. Sure, we'll go to 3. We're not planning to ultimate Tezzeret. We're more just hoping to use him as a value engine. Opponent plays Rekindling Phoenix, and yep, that's a good reason to hold up a Metallic Rebuke. That's not something Battle at the Bridge would stop. And now we draw another Tezzeret, which means we can start to play fast and loose with our Tezzeret. It'd be great if we could remove that Scrounger from the graveyard, but since we have 2 Tezzerets, we can kill kind of a long stream of creatures if our opponent decides to go for that. They have a Goblin Chain Whirler, which, because it would kill our first Tezzeret, we're going to counter that, which may have been a mistake. It's hard to say, since our second Tezzeret... but actually I think it was correct, because our second Tezzeret can't kill it with a minus, so we don't want to have to waste Battle at the Bridge on that one just yet. Alright, so at this point, Tezzeret's not going to win the game for us, but we're just generating some servos, trying to get value, and just waiting to draw something like, oh hey, Herald of Anguish. That'll close out the game relatively quickly. These red-black decks do run Unlicensed Disintegration. It's possible that holding Herald of Anguish might have made sense there for that reason. Notice that I'm not attacking with the servo because I am wary of some kind of Earthshaker Kenra plus Unlicensed Disintegration combo killing Tezzeret. It's very, very unlikely, but the 1 damage is just not going to matter at all. And it's better to protect the Planeswalker if you can, and it turns out opponent did not have Unlicensed Disintegration. They just discarded a useless Inventor's Apprentice and scooped. Kind of an early concession, but if you don't have the Disintegration, you're not going to be able to do anything for a few turns, and it just must feel miserable to be on the other side of the table here. So moving on to the next 2 games, which did not go quite as well, and I'm trying to remember whether I misplayed or not. So we have a pretty good opening hand. Again, we got some Puzzle Knots, a Tezzeret, the Battle of the Bridge. Missing a Metallic Rebuke, so our opponent could resolve something kind of scary, but we'll go with it. We draw a land, which wasn't what we were looking for quite yet, but it's fine to have 1 land here. And now we're just going to cast the Prophetic Prism over the Puzzle Knot. The Servo's not going to block this turn. That's not really its role. This could let our opponent get down a Bomat Courier, but having the extra information early really helps us next turn, having that extra card in hand. For example, if we were to draw a Metallic Rebuke, or hey, another Battle of the Bridge, that might affect our sequencing for future turns. So we just get smashed by Scrounger. Our opponent runs out of Chain Whirler, so that's another reason not to play the Puzzle Knots. If you are facing a red deck that plays Chain Whirlers, and it's your turn too, and you have a choice whether or not to put servos into play, sometimes it's better just to wait, because your servos just tend to die a lot for free in these matchups, which is not great. In fact, it might even be correct to take out some Puzzle Knots against these decks, because this deck runs Bomat Courier. I'm a little loath to do that. Hard to say. Anyway, so we just battle the Chain Whirler here. Go back up to a healthy 19 life. Looking to cast Tezzeret here, hopefully. Our opponent has Karn. Ugh. So Karn is one of those cards that's very difficult for us to answer unless we have our own Karn or a Herald. Tezzeret, unfortunately, is going to really struggle against this card. And that might even be a reason to board in Vraska's Contempt. I'm trying to remember if I did. Nope, both Vraska's Contempt still sitting in the sideboard here. And yeah, hard to tell which decks play Karn, which don't. Some of the red-black aggro decks maybe leave it out, but it's probably in their sideboards either way, so... Right now, what we're going to do is just kill the Construct. We just want to hit Karn and make sure they can't make another Construct for free. So we get Karn down to a Loyalty, which is nice. They go ahead and plus it, and ouch. In case you didn't see that, they hit Chandra, Torch of Defiance, and Sky Sovereign Consul Flagship. Kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't. I wound up giving them Chandra. It may have been correct just to give them the Flagship, and hope that they didn't have a land for it right away. The problem is that Sky Sovereign is another card that's extremely difficult for us to deal with. We can't interact with it using Battle of the Bridge or Tezzeret's ability. They have a Scrap Heap Scrounger that can crew it forever. So yeah, at this point we are in really bad shape, and it turns out our opponent did have the 5th land anyway, but what's worse is not only do they have Chandra into Walking Ballista, which means we just have no chance at killing either their Planeswalkers anytime soon, and Bomat Courier, and at this point we kind of need to draw Herald of Anguish or we're just going to die, and even if we do draw Herald of Anguish, things are still tight because they have a Chandra that can minus on it, and they can kill it with any burn spell they have. But let's look for the draw. Not a Herald of Anguish, and we just concede. They're going to play a Sky Sovereign next turn off of their Karn minus, at worst, and there's no way we can handle that from this position. On to game 3, so you saw the deck's major weakness there. We have a hard time dealing with Planeswalkers and a really hard time dealing with Flyers, flying equipment especially. So this draw looks fine. It's got a Metallic Rebuke and a Fatal Push. A lot of early interaction, Herald of Anguish, which is certainly our best finisher in this matchup. Pardon me. We get an early Puzzle Knot. Games with this deck tend to play out very repetitively, so I may be speeding through the early turns a bit more later on. So our opponent has a Scrounger, and we're just going to attack with a Servo here and hold back. Because we have 2 Metallic Rebukes, we really want to focus on countering opposing spells over using Fatal Push for now, although we can do both, of course. So we're going to push the Scrounger now to save ourselves some damage. Opponent plays Walking Ballista, we counter. Always tricky to figure out how to use the Fatal Pushes in these Scrounger matchups when you can't exile graveyards very easily. But this is nice. A Puzzle Knot's actually very good. This makes me feel very hopeful about the game because what we get to do now is hold up counter magic, play Herald of Anguish next turn, and if they don't have an unlicensed incineration, they just die. If they do, we're at least 2 for 1-ing them in a pretty efficient way. And nope, you're not resolving a Karn, sorry. So opponent's down to 3 cards in hand. And no backup finishers, which is a little unfortunate, but we do get to slam Herald of Anguish, and here's the point where I made a pretty bad mistake. I was thinking, okay, they might have unlicensed disintegration, but if they do, Herald's dying either way, I might as well get in 2 damage with servos. That was a little silly, as you'll see next turn, so we get in hits with servos, deal our opponent 2 damage, whatever. Again, it doesn't really matter, so I did make a mistake. They discard a mountain, and now they're going to play a Bombat Courier, and then kill Herald of Anguish with an unlicensed disintegration. So what I really should have done, of course, there was just hold up 2 lands instead of attacking with servos, so that if they did do something like this, or even try to reanimate Scrapheap Scrounger and then unlicensed disintegration, I can force them to use the disintegration before they play a creature, and I don't lose 3 life. So that would have been nice to do. Kind of a minor thing, but 3 damage can matter. And now we're empty-handed facing a Bombat Courier. We do have some servos to block, but we are in very desperate need to draw a finisher, so we exile the graveyards in the meantime. So it's almost like our opponent and I are empty-handed, but we know they have some spells. They're not playing lands. And as it turns out, we're going to use the Renegade map, try to thin the deck a bit. Draw a Puzzle Knot, which isn't great, but we're still kind of holding them off. 3 Puzzle Knots, 3 servos, or 4 servos. We can crack a Puzzle Knot on their turn. Can hold off an Inventor's Apprentice pretty well, but nope, Goblin Chain Whirler, and that's going to end the game in a real hurry if we don't find another Herald of Anguish. And as it turns out, you know, Karn would also be fine here, by the way. Karn would be quite good. And Battle the Bridge is nice, but just not going to quite do it. We do get to save some life, kill a Chain Whirler, hold some servos back to try and keep blocking Bombat Courier, but when our opponent plays Sky Sovereign Consul Flagship, that's a little too much there. So that was probably the card they were holding on to for a while. They just need the 5th land, and now we don't draw a Herald, and we are gonna scoop it up here. The Bombat Courier drawing them several cards next turn on top of Sky Sovereign being available just means it's not worth the time to play it out. Instead, we get to go spend our time playing other matches, like the last 4 here, which were all victories. And I think that Red-Black Aggro matchup is probably very even. The more mid-range version, where they're running stuff like Sky Sovereign. We may need to make some sideboard switches to toughen us up against vehicles, maybe even a 3rd Sorcerer's Spyglass. Hard to say. So this time we are up against another red-black deck. We get a little bit of early scry on. This hand's kind of okay, needs a finisher somewhere. We certainly have a lot of servos, but are trying to be wary of Chain Whirler, so we're going to go ahead and play a schematic. We have counter magic up on turn 3, it's a good feeling. Opponent's just going to try and cast a Ballista for 1, which we're going to allow, and that doesn't matter too much. Then they attack with Scrounger, and we, after thinking for a while, I decided to double block, because they can use the Ballista to technically sort of 2 for 1 us, but I'd be totally happy trading these 2 servos for a Ballista anyway. I just want to get their creatures off the board. I have plenty of servos, plenty of artifacts for improvise. I just want to make sure they're not accumulating threats on the board. I want to be able to resolve a Planeswalker safely later. Draw another land, not incredible, but we still have a couple servos left. They're going to play Chandra, which we're going to say no to. Now this is not a great position, they still have 4 cards in hand, but Battle the Bridge is nice, that at least counters 1 threat later. Rekindling Phoenix, okay, maybe it doesn't quite counter that threat. So we're in rough shape because of the bird, we draw another land, and yeah, this is, sometimes the deck can just kind of spin its wheels a lot, because these Servo Schematics and Renegades maps certainly aren't as powerful card for card as things like Rekindling Phoenix. It's much better for us to have access to cards like, hey, the Antiquities War, that's a good one. So this is going to be a challenge, see if we can actually kill our opponent with all these artifacts in time. Antiquities War digs us into Prophetic Prism. One good thing about the new version of the deck is I've raised the artifact count from 18 to 20, which makes it quite a bit harder for Antiquities War to whiff. I've had a few too many painful misses with that card where you don't even get an artifact, and that feels really bad. So our opponent does some cycling, some ballistaing. They're going to try and build up a board here. We need to not drop to too low a life total here. We need to be able to get off the Antiquities War, but unfortunately we're kind of in a tough spot here. We make the decision to block with 2 servos, just to force our opponent to pump their ballista again and spend mana on that. That might have been a mistake. Maybe just blocking with 1 was better, but against a ballista, servo blocking decisions often don't matter very much. Our opponent goes ahead, pumps the ballista, knocks us to 9. And here's the point where I need to use this Battle of the Bridge to stall. But one problem with Battle of the Bridge is it gets a lot of its utility out of actually resolving. If it's against a ballista, you can't actually gain any life, which is bad. So we're going to go ahead and make 1 more serve with the Puzzle Knot. And we could have chosen, if we had wanted to do something like crack a Puzzle Knot, hold up 2 servos against the ballista, which forces our opponent to go a little bit smaller. This could have been a bad play here. It's always tough to tell. They have a really big hand here. Instead, we just go for Battle of the Bridge and get blown out in the way that, well, we probably should have expected. We leave a servo untapped, but they just have the Unlicensed Disintegration for their own Phoenix, so we don't gain 10 life. They get this bird out of the yard, and because we haven't drawn either of our Sentinel totems, we are now toast. They're going to get back the Phoenix. They can pump ballista, kill a servo, attack us, kill us. We're not going to ever get this Antiquities War off, and that, my friends, is why you don't play Antiquities War in game 2 and 3 against these decks. I think it was a mistake not a mistake to have in the main deck because that was game 1, but it certainly comes out for games 2 and 3. 2 turns is just too long, and it's a little too easy for your opponent to like absorb 15 damage, trade a creature or 2, but just beat you down while your Antiquities War is just ticking. Much better is to have threats that are a little more interactive with the board. So this hand is fine. Again, no threats. 2 Scavenger Grounds is great. We're going to have a Hard Time Illusion Rekindling Phoenix. As you can see, I ignored my own advice and kept in the Antiquities War. I think that was probably a mistake, although it's going to turn out to be enough in this game. I think I've been keeping it in on the play, removing it on the draw, which could make sense. Just because having it on turn 4 on the play makes it a little easier for you to live. Your opponent has to play you in 5 turns instead of 6. So our opponent's going to go for a Ballista. We have a Metallic Rebuke up. We'll just counter anything at this point. We're just trying to use our mana since we're going to spend all 4 of it on Antiquities War next turn. And we're doing a good job keeping the board clear. These Inventor's Apprentices are looking pretty bad. These 1/2s. We hit off the Antiquities War again. Feels great. Attacking with the servo doesn't really matter either way much. Opponent gets down Rekindling Phoenix, which is a good blocker against the Antiquities War, but that means we at least get to battle or Scavenger Grounds to get rid of it permanently at the end. We hit another artifact off the Antiquities War. We're at 15, super safe life total, so we're just going to go ahead and... We draw Sorcerer's Spyglass. We could have played Cogworker's Puzzle Knot to have 1 more artifact for when the Antiquities War goes off. That might have been correct, but a card I'm worried about is our opponent is playing another Walking Ballista, killing a servo, and then getting a lot of value blocking. Hard to say how likely that is. They've already played 1 Ballista. I also just kind of want to know what's in their hand, which might help me make decisions on how to attack on the next turn with the Antiquities War. Who knows? Anyway, I see a Braid, Bombat Courier, and Mountain, a handful of pretty irrelevant cards. And I have 6 artifacts out, so our opponent needs to either play a Braid and hold back a blocker, or hold back 2 blockers. After thinking for a while... Oh man, the opponent thinks forever here. Let's just fast forward. They end up just attacking Bombat Courier. We trade a servo, which might have been wrong there. It might have been better to be attacking with another 5/5. In fact, probably was wrong. I expected they would live through this attack, though, and I really didn't want to leave them with a Bombat Courier that could sacrifice to draw cards later. It was getting pretty late here. Some of these plays made a bit sketchy. In any case, the nice thing about this deck is your cards are so powerful that sometimes you don't need to play optimally. Sometimes you just attack your opponent, they block with a Phoenix, choose to save the Inventor's Apprentices. They're thinking about the late game, which is probably smart. They take out our Sorcerer's Spyglass within a Braid, drop to 4, we kill the Phoenix. And rather than Battle of Bridging the token, we're just going to use the Scavenger Grounds, trading a land for their recursive threat. Much better than using Battle of the Bridge here. At this point, pretty much anything else we get can kill them pretty quickly, so we're just trying to stall to find a Herald of Anguish. They, of course, have Chain Whirler, meaning our server doesn't get to play around much. But at least we have a good Battle of the Bridge target right now. So we draw another land, yawn, play out a Puzzle Knot, battle the Chain Whirler. And at this point, our opponent only drawing 4 lands is paying off. The Chandra is quite nice. You get to plus that up. It's going to be a little bit tough to pressure. They are still attacking the Inventor's Apprentices, which means we get to attack through the Elemental. But yeah, this is tough. We drew another Battle of the Bridge, which is nice, but we kind of need to be a Herald of Anguish. If this deck plays 6 Herald of Anguish, it probably would. but we can't, so we're just going to have to sit here. Our opponent is going to make a gigantic walking ballista, which is bad. Note how they kept 4 mana up there to try and play around Metallic Rebuke, and then mistakenly didn't add a counter to their ballista, which is a little weird. It's not a punt that's going to matter too much either way. At this point, it's basically we draw Herald of Anguish or a Antiquities War, or we die. That's pretty much our options. We're going to crack Puzzle Knots in the meantime, try to somehow apply some pressure to Chandra. It's going to be rough. But, ooh, we draw Karn. That'll work, actually. So what we're going to do here is first, going to battle at the bridge to take out the walking ballista, because ballista makes it too easy for our opponent to kill Karn if we just decide to make a token, which is what we're going to do. So we need this ballista off the board, even though we lose 2 servos, and it feels bad in the process. So we do that. Now we get to attack Chandra to make sure she's not going to sneak up and ultimate on us. We crack the Renegade map so that we can crack the Puzzle Knot and also play Karn this turn. So even though we lose an artifact, we get the chance to have a chump blocker for Karn, which is much more valuable. Make a 5/5 construct, hit Chandra. The construct is large enough to now to survive a Chandra minus, which is very good. Chandra is going to go ahead and -4 on the construct. Opponent's going to play Goblin Chain Whirler. Oh gosh, that card is good. So, because they top decked a Chain Whirler, they now get to kill Karn. At the very least, we did knock a counter off the Chandra. We're going to go ahead and chump block. It's better to get some extra cards from the Karn and Loyalty than it is to get to hold onto a servo, I think, although things are feeling rough. But then finally, 21 cards deep, we draw our first Herald of Anguish, and it really only takes 1 usually. At this point, if our opponent does not top deck Unlicensed Disintegration their toast, we get to plus Karn. Play Herald. Our opponent is not going to get to kill Karn here. They top an Inventor's Apprentice with Chandra. Play it out. Go for a Karn of their own, which is certainly potent. Get 2 lands off the Karn. We just give them one of those, and they just scoop, which seemed a little premature to me because, yeah, they can't quite kill Karn here. But they have a Karn, and if I attack their Karn, they can attack my Karn. It's not as though I'm doing all that much. Yeah, this was definitely a premature concession. Our other exiled silver counter card was a Sentinel Totem, which doesn't do a lot besides give fuel for Herald of Anguish, but who knows? Maybe they just felt like I was going to wipe their board next turn. It wasn't worth trying to play through it. In any case, moving to game 3, we now know that maybe they took out the Unlicensed Disintegrations. Maybe they're just very soft to Herald or something. So we keep a hand that's very sketchy, but remembering how they scooped a Herald last game, we decided to keep Servo Schematic Herald in lands, hoping we'll draw some good stuff. Don't have that many lands in our deck, but we do immediately draw the other island, of course. We use Zalfrin Void to scry, I believe, a Sentinel Totem to the bottom there. When it has a Ballista for 1, which is not too scary, we're just going to kill it right away. This is going to look weird, but I didn't want to play out the Servo Schematic because Chain Whirler would just wreck us. I wanted to do something this turn. I really want these servos to actually survive. I don't want my opponent to just be able to passively kill a servo with Walking Ballista, because I need these servos to cast Herald of Anguish in anything resembling fast enough time. Fortunately, our opponent kept kind of a slow hand. Our Servo Schematic is going to get to have the servo live for now. Opponent has a Karn, which is definitely scary. We give them an Inventor's Apprentice instead of an Unlicensed Disintegration. So now we have to kill Karn immediately. Thank goodness we have this Vraska's Contempt now. Otherwise, they would be able to get Unlicensed Disintegration. I'm not sure we're going to be able to win this game at all. But now we get to Contempt a Karn. Hopefully they don't have another one. And Contempt the Karn means we get to play Herald of Anguish next turn if we want to. Hard to say whether we're going to want to or not. Opponent has a Ballista for 2, then Inventor's Apprentice. So our opponent definitely screws up here. They should have just killed the servo. There's no reason to not do that, I think. And now we get to play Herald of Anguish on time, which is great. And yeah, we're just going to go ahead and do this. If they have another Unlicensed Disintegration, that's too bad. But now at least we're protected from Karn being played and minusing to get the Disintegration, because we can counter with Metallic Rebuke later. Crossing our fingers, and oof, they have 2 Abrades instead. So Herald of Anguish was a 3-for-1 there, if anyone's counting. We'll see if it matters. Our opponent's down to 1 card left. We have Sentinel Totem, which isn't incredible, but it does scry a swamp to the bottom, so it's basically a redraw, because we didn't want to draw that swamp. We get to hold on to Vraska's Contempt. I would like to Vraska's Contempt in response to an activation on the Walking Ballista if I can, just so it never gets to have 3 counters. Meanwhile, we're at a healthy 17. The Battle of the Bridge helped. And our opponent's going to put a counter on. We're going to remove the Ballista. It's going to kill the servo. So now it's just Inventor's Apprentice against nothing, basically. This Metallic Rebuke will trade for most of their scary things, and Well, long story short, we top decked another Herald of Anguish. That was fortunate. And now our opponent is completely toast if they can immediately kill it. They have Ballista for 3 off the top, which isn't bad. We can't counter that. But now we can easily just kill the Ballista, hold up counter mana, and yeah, they don't have a lot of outs here. We still can't counter Unlicensed Disintegration, so that could still work. And that goes back to a pure top deck war. But our opponent just can't draw an Unlicensed Disintegration to save their life. The Scrap Heap Scrounger doesn't even matter because we're just going to attack them to death. We can outrace them pretty easily with Herald of Anguish. Drawing more lands isn't great, but we go ahead and wipe the graveyard now. Note that we don't do it when we don't like kill the Scrap Heap Scrounger and then try to wipe the graveyards. What I want to do is just kill the Scrounger and then make sure there's nothing that it can use to bring back, and that way I can exile it with my Sentinel Totem. I have many ways to exile the graveyard, so it's better just to make sure the Scrounger has no fuel in general. Now they attack with both. I kill the Scrounger and just take 1 damage off the Inventor's Apprentice, feeling very good. Opponent rips a land. We have a Puzzle Knot, which is 2 more removal spells, and our opponent now scoops it up, which is probably appropriate. It still could have held out to draw a Disintegration, but even that would still leave them in a pretty bad spot, facing down a Puzzle Knot and a Metallic Rebuke in hand. Yeah, probably an early concession, but they're in a bad spot. And yep, basically the number of games this deck wins against mid-rangey things is pretty proportional to the number of Herald of Anguishes it draws. That's another good reason to add the Metal Spinner's Puzzle Knot. We often, just so often, want to churn through our deck and just find a friggin' Herald. Herald is so good. So we're going to play a match here against a blue-black control list. We keep a pretty good hand. Battle at the Bridge is going to be a little bit dead, but we get to Metallic Rebuke, a Search for Ghalta. And let's see what happens here. Alright, another Metallic Rebuke. That's very good. Means we'll be able to play Tezzeret with protection pretty soon. As it turns out, our opponent goes for a Search for Ghalta. And yep, so they drew 2 searches, we drew 2 Metallic Rebukes. Metallic Rebuke, another card this deck would probably play 5 or 6 of, if we could. So instead we're just going to go ahead and we have the choice between Tezzeret and Karn. I go ahead and start with Karn because it's going to be card advantage. If our opponent like Vraska's Contempts the Tezzeret on turn 4 before it ultimates, having a couple of Ethereum Cell tokens is very medium. But instead now we just get to keep plussing up Karn. We find a Herald of Anguish on top when we scry with Zolfar and Void, so that means we are probably not going to plus with Karn this turn if we can help it. We just want to draw the Herald next turn. So our plan was just to play Tezzeret, play Renegade Map, plus Tezzeret, and then make a token with Karn. And then just draw the Herald of Anguish instead of using Karn's plus ability, but our opponent just scoops to Tezzeret. They must not have had a counter for it, so yeah. Rough game, they got a little mana screwed. Game 2 is much closer. We both do a lot of stuff, so looks like this is just traditional blue-black control. Party like it's 2018, but earlier in the year. In any case, we keep a 1-land double Renegade Map hand, which can be a little dicey sometimes, but we get to scry off this All from Void, meaning that if any of our top 3 cards are lands, we get to see them on turn 2. And double map, it's slow, but we do get the lands eventually, and we're not going to be under a ton of pressure here. As it turns out, we draw another Zolfrin? Don't know what to say here. Draw another Void, which is great, helping us smooth out the draws. Void is sort of the unspoken MVP of the deck, where Herald is like the true MVP. So we scry a Servo Schematic to the bottom, definitely don't want that. We're just going to play a Renegade Map, pass. No Search for Ghalta this time, which is really nice. So now we start having a lot of choices to make. We do have this Negate, so if we really wanted to, we could crack the Renegade Map, play an island, and have Negate up. But since they didn't play Search for Ghalta on turn 2, it's unlikely they're going to play anything super scary during their turn we want to counter. So I'm pretty happy just starting to fill the board with artifacts, making sure we hit our land drops, playing Merchant's Dockhand. After last game, it seems really unlikely they would keep in Fatal Pushes, so of course Merchant's Dockhand gets to come in the sideboard MVP. When we can just hold up 7 counter spells, and we have 7 counters in our deck post-board against these blue control decks, and we can have a Merchant's Dockhand in play and be holding up counter magic. It's like being able to cast Glimmer of Genius every turn. It's amazing. So it turns out they did have a Search for Ghalta, which is a little awkward, but whatever. We have a couple Sentinel Totems, some Scavenger Grounds. And because this isn't a seal away deck, we can even just attack with Dockhand. So opponent can't do much. They are an instant speed deck, but our Merchant's Dockhand is just schooling them here, forcing them to plays like this one, where they kicked Blink of an Eye on Dockhand, which is very funny. We could negate this, or we could let Dockhand go back to our hand. This is a pretty interesting position. If we let Dockhand go back to our hand, we do have Negate up for next turn, but this isn't a Teferi deck. I'm not really scared of anything I'd be able to negate. They could play Scarab God, but we can't negate the Scarab God. So instead, we're just going to go ahead and use this Dockhand to draw an extra card. In fact, we're going to cast the spell Impulse, which is a very strong cube card, a pretty strong 1v1 commander card, and we're just casting it for free here, essentially. We take a Metallic Rebuke, which we could have taken a Prism to draw more cards, but I want to have more counters to stop things like Torrential Gearhulk. Torrential Gearhulk is the thing I'm really scared of here, and to help me force through Planeswalkers later. If they were to play Scarab God, it wouldn't be too dicey. Scarab God is awkward against our deck that runs very few actual creatures, and wow, we drew Karn. That is very good, but we are afraid of our opponent having 2 counters now. We could try to crack a map, play Karn, and have Metallic Rebuke up, but that fails to not only 2 counters, it also just fails to negate, because they can just pay for the Rebuke if they have a negate. So we're going to use Merchant's Dockhand as a bait spell. It eats an Essence Scatter. So now we're just going to try and run our opponent out of counterspells, brute force. We play the Cogworker's Puzzle Knot, which means we now next turn have Karn plus Negate back up. We could have tried to play the Antiquities War. I was a little bit afraid of a Negate. Basically, I'm trying to force our opponent into a turn where they have to try and spend all of their mana at once, and it doesn't work. They Field of Ruin the Spire of Industry. This is a good reason, by the way, to run 2 islands in the deck instead of just 1. I have occasionally seen opponents try to do things like Field of Ruin an island to take me off of having counterspells up, and it's really satisfying just to be able to fetch another island out in that case. Oh no, Moto is bugging out here? Oh, say it ain't so, Moto. Alright, well the game didn't last much longer here. They basically took a turn, untapped, didn't play another land, and we went ahead and played Karn. They tried to counter it, we negated their counter, and they died on the spot. And yeah, so they conceded that turn to our active Karn making a 6/6 token, and at that point, yeah, they're pretty dead. Even if they Vraska's contempted us, we could just play the Antiquities War, and they go down in flames. So that was how that game went. Blue control decks are some of this deck's easiest matchups. Weirdly, I would say the 2 best matchups for this deck are blue control and pure red aggro. Battle of the Bridge is just so good against red, everything they have. And the blue control decks just fall really hard to Merchant's Dockhand and to Planeswalker with Metallic Rebuke backup. Pretty much the only way you can lose to blue-white is to them having a Teferi you don't counter before you can get a Planeswalker down. Happens sometimes, it's not common. Here's another 1-land Renegade map hand. We keep it because it has 2 prisms. We're going to see a lot of cards. Certainly risky, and drawing the servo schematic is a feel bad. That's going to make it pretty hard to curve out. Opponent's playing the Omnipresent Black-White Knights deck. We draw another non-land, which really sucks. So now we're just desperately digging for lands with Prophetic Prism. Karn is not a land. And yeah, this could be an ignominious defeat by Mana Screw, but at least our opponent's not coming out too fast. No Heart of Karens, no History of Benalia. And we do finally draw a land, so now we get to play Prophetic Prism. Sadly, we can't rebuke anything, so we're just going to Battle the Bridge, take out the Scrounger, take out their most powerful card. Hope we draw a 4th land for Tezzeret. We'll see what happens. Opponent just has another Knight of Malice. This card never impresses me. I suppose it's sort of a good meta call against blue-white, but ugh, 2 2s for 2. Alright, we draw the Antiquities War, a 4th land there, and we would have been in an excellent position just playing Karn and minusing it or something. Instead, we have the Antiquities War, so we're just going to start playing... so we play a Spyglass here to make sure our opponent can't just Karn us or something. We don't see a Karn, we do see Walking Ballista, so we're just going to turn that one off. Thank you, Sorcerer's Spyglass. Fatal Push, at least, isn't very good against us, so we're just going to take some hits from these Knights. We can stand a few turns of this, at least. We're hoping they don't play Lyra, because we can't really answer a Lyra right now. They can't, they just play Scrapheap Scrounger and Ballista for 1. It's a lot of creatures. So we draw the land, but it's a little bit late here. Instead of playing out a Planeswalker that'll just die immediately, we go ahead and drop double Servo Schematic. We're again just hoping they don't draw a 5th land for Lyra, because if the Knights stay 2/2s, we can sort of use our life total as a cushion, but no, they hit the land, they hit the Lyra, and at this point we're just under a little too much pressure. Because they can Fatal Push a Servo next turn, we're just going to throw away the Servos now to make sure that they function at keeping our life total high. We could have double blocked the Scrounger and dropped to 6 instead of 9, but the Scrounger can just eat a Scrounger. We can't block the Knights because they have First Strike. So at this point things are looking very, very grim. We take a shot at Tezzeret Kill Lyra, hoping our opponent will use Tezzeret as a sponge. As it turns out, though, they go ahead and kill Tezzeret, knock us to 4, They have only a Fatal Push left, but we really need to draw, like, specifically Battle at the Bridge or Herald of Anguish are the only two cards that get us out of this. Zalfrin Void is neither. We scry just for funsies. See nothing. And we can't win here. Even Karn minus, we just die to damage from the attackers. So a grim start, but our Black-White Knights matchup is very good for reasons you're about to see. I'll just give it away up front. The reason Black-White Knight matchup is very good is they really can't kill Herald of Anguish in Game 1. In Game 2 and 3 they can, but often it's pretty easy to play around the one cast out or Thopter Rest they might have. Also, this hand is great. We're just going to go ahead and play some early Puzzle Knot stuff here. Looking at just getting a turn for Herald if we need to, if we have nothing else going on. We draw Metallic Rebuke. Great to have this flexibility. We get to play Sorcerer's Spyglass, and we see... Alright, so here's where things get tricky. We see a Thopter Rest. Thopter Rest can, in fact, beat Herald of Anguish. So we need to be playing around that this game. We see Lyra, Dawnbringer, Scrapheap Scrounger, Fragmentize Deadlands. Fortunately, Fragmentize is just awful against our deck. It doesn't really do anything. It can kill a Sorcerer's Spyglass, and that's the best target for it. So I'm happy enough to see that. There are no Walking Ballistas, not that it would matter, they could Fragmentize the Spyglass anyway. But we just named Ballista on spec. Here, might have been smarter to name Karn, but because we run Karns, it seems like we should not risk turning off our own Karns, just in the off chance that our opponent draws a Karn. Instead, we're just going to use this Metallic Rebuke on anything that breathes. Scrapheap Scrounger, no thank you. So we're carefully counting down our opponent's hand. At this point, it's down to isolated... the known cards are just these 4, you can see. So we draw Prophetic Prism, not that helpful. We're certainly not going to play Herald of Anguish now. Yes, they would discard a card, but getting it Thopter Rested is a disaster because we have nothing else going on in this hand. So we're going to do the usual thing, make chump blockers, churn through the deck. Battle the Bridge is nice, that'll buy us a lot of time, or kill a Lyra. And in fact, the killing Lyra part of Battle the Bridge, which makes it so much better than Fatal Push, you're going to see that pretty soon. Our opponent casts History of Benalia, which is pretty good against us on turn 3, much less scary in later turns. Metallic Rebuke is perfect. So now we have formulated a plan. The plan is that we are going to cast a Herald of Anguish. Now this is a pretty tricky turn. The reason it's tricky is we have exactly 10 quote-unquote mana here, 6 artifacts, 4 lands, which means we can cast Herald of Anguish and hold up Metallic Rebuke to stop Thopter Rest, which is great. The problem is our opponent has Fragmentize, and though I don't think they would think to do this, it's possible that if we were to leave up, let's say we left up Prophetic Prism as our artifact, they could just Fragmentize the Prophetic Prism and then Thopter Rest our Herald of Anguish, at which point we would not have mana for Metallic Rebuke anymore. That would be very bad. So instead, we get to leave up Servo Schematic, which is really nice, because if they do Fragmentize Servo Schematic, it spits out a Servo before they can Thopter Rest. Instead, our opponent just discards Fragmentize. Again, don't know if they were thinking of doing that, but we're in a really nice spot here. They're going to try Thopter Rest because they have to. We're going to Metallic Rebuke it. All they have now is a Lyra Dawnbringer and an unknown. We just draw Zalfrin Void. Doesn't matter too much. Zalfrin Void finds us a Tezzeret, which we definitely keep. More the merrier at this point. It's a Ground Stall, and anything that helps us claw ahead is good. Opponent has 4 creatures, but we have 2 removal spells, so none of it really matters. So here, the worst thing our opponent could do is just have a cast out or another Thopter Rest. So we're just going to kill the scariest creatures they have, just in case. If they don't have those cards, Lyra doesn't matter to us. We don't really need to conserve artifacts because we can just kill Lyra with Battle at the Bridge. So we're just going to kill a Knight token in response to History of Benalia doing stuff. It's kind of arbitrary what you do at this point. We decided to kill 1 Knight token instead of 2. We could have killed both. It may be a little bit more valuable to take out the Scroungers. Opponent goes attacking. They have an Ifnir Deadlands, so we are not going to be doing any blocking today. Instead, we just chump a Knight, hit a Scrounger. They have Lyra Dawnbringer, but this is where Tezzeret really shines. We're going to use our Planeswalker to kill their 5-drop. And our Planeswalker is protected now, so unless they have a cast out for Herald, they're very dead. As it turns out they don't, we can just chump the Scrounger instead of using Ifnir Deadlands, and lo and behold, the game is basically over. Our opponent's going to fight it out for another turn or 2, but from this standpoint, we can just kill all of their creatures forever. We have more than enough Herald triggers. And even though Scrapheap Scrounger keeps coming back, Scrapheap Scrounger does not beat Herald of Anguish in a fight. So we Plague Win them this turn. They have another History of Benalia, but History of Benalia is just laughable in the face of Herald of Anguish. We're generating extra removal spells with Tezzeret every turn. The Tezzeret Herald synergy is pretty sick. We have this Battle at the Bridge just in case they do something to pressure our life total. And at this point, we're just looking at taking up Tezzeret to ultimate. We can kill a bunch of their creatures here. Even if they had a removal spell for Herald, we can still kill all their creatures this turn, then Battle at the Bridge, the last one, and then Tezzeret just ultimates very quickly after that. So we're in an excellent spot here. They're just going to minus our Herald of Anguish because they can. And yeah, now we have a Karn, and I'm just going to turn it off here because the game is very, very over. Moving to game 3. So this Knights deck is supposedly like the best deck in Standard or something. But again, we just tend to crush it pretty easily. We have a Zolfran Void hand, which means we're pretty likely to hit lands. So we go ahead, Zolfran Void. Don't recall the Scry. If it was a land, we would have kept it. Any non-land, we'd have thrown away. Drowned Catacomb. Maybe we saw on top. We get the Puzzle Knot going. Now, Heart of Kiran's a very annoying card. Makes it really hard for our Planeswalkers to survive. It's one of the reasons we now run 2 copies of the Spyglass in the main deck. No Spyglass yet, but we do have Battle at the Bridge. So there's a choice we make here. We could either Battle at the Bridge the Scrap Heap Scrounger, hope they don't have another way to crew the Heart, or hold up Metallic Rebuke. Right now, the thing I'm really scared of is them just going to land Karn. So, especially because Karn could just crew the Heart of Kiran anyway. So we're going to hold up Rebuke now, take some hits. If they had played anything else capable of crewing Heart of Kiran or even History of Benalia, we would have countered that instead. History of Benalia, no thank you. So now we get to Rebuke, and Tezzeret's excellent, because now Tezzeret gets to do his trick, where it goes Tezzeret, plus, minus, Battle the Bridge, kill your creature, and now even if they can crew the Heart, they can't kill Tezzeret. Instead they have Knight of Malice, which is just very bad in this position. We're just going to keep plussing Tezzeret. At this point we're just looking to ultimate. No muss, no fuss. We minus Karn. Our opponent does get to crew the Heart here, and they have the question of whether to knock down Tezzeret or kill Karn. They make what I'm pretty sure is the wrong decision to kill Karn, because once we ultimate this Tezzeret, we get a 5/5 every turn, and there's certainly nothing in their deck that beats that. They might be trying to hope to race us with Heart of Kiran and Walking Ballista, but we have various tools to stop that. This Metallic Rebuke will certainly help, and with the Tezzeret emblem going, the game's going to end really quick. So, looking back over the game, it may have been sort of a whirlwind, but the key turn was when we were able to play a Planeswalker and kill their last threat after having been able to counter everything. So, they were even on the play, and it just didn't matter because cards like Metallic Rebuke and Battle of the Bridge can buy you so much tempo. They're going to keep. They have a Karn, which might have been why they were trying to fight through our Tezzeret, but we have the Metallic Rebuke, Thing of Beauty, and now we are just clocking our opponent for enormous quantities of damage, and we have another Karn. Yeah, this one's over. So there's a reason we're playing 4 Karns now. It's because, boy, these things stack up quickly. Might be the 4 Karns is too much, but we'll see. I'm going to try this one out in the standard tournament on Saturday, maybe. See how things go. So, very last match of the league, you get to see us clown Black-White Knights one more time. Heart of Kiran, no problem. We have a Prophetic Prism. And woo, I'm going through the game a little too quickly. Let's actually take a step back and move through the early turns a bit faster. Early turns are often actually pretty interesting in this deck. You frequently have a lot of decisions to make. So, we are looking at a turn 2 Scrap Heap Scrounger for like the 7th game in a row, it feels like. We have a Prophetic Prism, so now we have our 4 lands, we have our Herald of Anguish, we have our Tezzeret, we have our double Battle of the Bridge. Game plan's all laid out. The big key thing here is, well, just make sure we don't die before we get down Herald. In game 1, this Black-White Knights deck, unless they're like a spicy version with Cast Out in it or something, just can't remove Herald of Anguish. So we're just going to use these Battle of the Bridges pretty liberally, keeping our life total high. If our opponent had a Karn now, that would be pretty scary, maybe. Although Herald of Anguish does a good job taking down Karn. Instead, we just have a Heart of Kiran, which is a couple of turns past being scary. Now we get to do our very favorite play, which is Tezzeret, plus Tezzeret. Kill a Knight token. And now our opponent needs to have, like, Fatal Push plus Scrap Heap Scrounger or something if they want to kill Tezzeret. We're making it difficult for them. They do have a big Knight, or I guess they could, if near Deadlands, a Servo. Ooh, they have a spicy one. They have Angel of Sanctions main deck, which would be great if we were playing Fatal Pushes, but we're playing Battle of the Bridge, so it's not. Also, we could just play Herald of Anguish and take it out, but whatever. So we drop to 13. We choose not to chump with the Servo yet. It can have value Mostly because we really needed to cast Herald this turn. We didn't have a guarantee of a land. We do draw a land here, which is nice. But instead of using the Herald right away, we're still worried about Angel of Sanctions coming back out of the graveyard. What we'd really like to do is use Herald to kill Angel of Sanctions when it comes back. So instead we just battle the Bridge of the Angel, get our Tezzeret back into play, we get to kill their Knight, so now our opponent has 2 cards in hand. They don't have enough lands to bring back Angel yet. They could, in theory, cast something, Crew Heart, and kill Tezzeret. Then we get to cast Herald of Anguish, or we get to cast Herald of Anguish if they do that. And start killing their creatures. So things are a little rough. If we are forced to cast Herald of Anguish and they get to bring back the Angel, that could be tricky if we don't have a Scavenger Grounds by then. Instead they use Scrap Heap Scrounger, Crew the Heart. They have to exile their own Angel to successfully get rid of Tezzeret here. My guess is their hand is full of cards like, well, okay, there was History of Benalia, maybe also some Fatal Pushes, who knows. So here you're going to see a fight. So we're going to drop Tezzeret again, plus Tezzeret. This might look a bit strange, but it makes it really hard for them to actually kill Tezzeret. What we're hoping to do is use Tezzeret to generate enough Ethereum cells that we can cast Herald of Anguish and instantly start killing things, just in case they have another Angel of Sanctions or something like that. A lot of decisions. We could have just played Herald there, but because they played Angel of Sanctions, they're clearly like a non-traditional version of this deck, and just running Herald out into a removal spell would feel really silly. What we'd love to do instead is just hold Herald until they have 1 card in hand, and then get their last card, and something like that. Instead, they use the Ifnir Deadlands. They now do get to kill Tezzeret. Notice how we're still at 22 life, because they've had to focus all their firepower on Planeswalkers so far. At this point, we draw a land, which is nice, so we're not going to wait any longer. Now we are going to cast Herald of Anguish, leaving 1 sacrifice effect up to kill something. So we get a little bit of value on our way out the door, just in case. Opponent discards a land. And in response to history triggering, we're just going to go ahead and kill a Knight, make a Servo to chump block with Servo Schematic. Opponent does have a cast out, which is kind of gross. They're definitely playing a non-standard version for all this to be available game 1. So now we are in some trouble. We had a high life total, a high cushion. We're getting hit really fast. So we're going to have some choices to make. Sorcerer's Spyglass, though, is perfect. So another Herald would have been excellent there. A Tezzeret would have been pretty good. Another Karn would have been pretty good, but Scrappy Sorcerer's Spyglass. Ugh, a lot of S's in this deck. Sorcerer's Spyglass is the bee's knees, because now we get to play it. They have another Heart of Kieran in hand. We're just going to go ahead and mute the Heart. Heart of Kieran, by the way, is the only reason that we are now playing 1 Fatal Push in the main deck. Having a split is good specifically against that card. Otherwise, Battle the Bridge is better in almost every position. So now we have a card and our opponent can't pressure it in the air anymore, which means we just get to make 5/5s. We're going to go ahead and shunt the Scrounger, kill the Knight, just in case they had another Ifnir, some way to get -2/-2. Decisions are, again, pretty arbitrary at this point. We just have a bunch of giant monster constructs. These are now 7/7s, and our opponent is going to die next turn unless they hold back to block. They draw something that's insignificant. Can't help them against the Karn, and they die. So, key decisions there were... Well, key turn there was when they didn't have the 6th land. If they could have brought back Angel of Sanctions, things might have been rough. Instead, we put them in a position where, because History of Benalia does not crew Heart of Kieran, and Heart of Kieran is legendary, they were stuck with an Access 1 in hand, they were in a position where they were forced to overutilize their graveyard. Scrounger exiling the Angel of Sanctions was sort of some anti-synergy, and we were able to overwhelm them by having a lot of Planeswalkers. Yeah, drawing Tezzeret, Karn, Herald in the top 17 cards is pretty good. Pretty good. So that was a good draw for us. Finally, we have game 2. So another great hand, lots of Planeswalkers, another early Scrap Heap Scrounger from them. Whoop, burning through the early turns here. Never mind, this is actually the same game. I've gotten caught up in things. That was game 2 we just played out. So, as you can tell, it's getting pretty late here. But that was a League with Anguished Affinity. This deck is very good, I think. It can certainly have games that make you want to tear your hair out, where you are just looking for a Karn or a Tezzeret or a Herald of Anguish, and it turns out that 50 of the cards in your deck don't do anything. But I think it more than makes up for that in the games where it just doesn't stumble very much. It gets to run only 22 lands. It gets to basically hit its 4-drops on turn 4 every game, almost, like 95% of games. Thanks again to Xeris X for the incredible design of the deck. That's a Reddit person who's been posting about Anguished Affinity a lot. If you go to the Reddit Spikes forum, you can see their writings. Their version looks a little different than mine by now, but I deeply respect them for creating the idea in the first place. So yeah, this deck just kind of curves out every game. It's extremely consistent in going turn 2 artifact, turn 3 artifact interaction, turn 4 artifact-based finisher, and then hopefully turn 5 another artifact-based finisher to clean things up. Can gain tremendous amounts of life with Battle the Bridge, can play the tempo game really well with Metallic Rebuke. The only real weakness is mono-green, certainly our worst matchup, with green-based Winding Constrictor decks being second worst. The large mid-range creatures are tough if our opponent has a lot of them very quickly. But I think the deck's very good. I would certainly play it in a tournament if I had to choose a standard deck to play, partly because I don't own Walking Ballistas, but also because it's just a great deck, and I hope you pick it up and try it for yourself. See you around later.